Welcome to Tamayus Junior School. At Tamayus Junior School, our professional teaching staff concentrates on your child and monitors results. Our spacious compound gives your child room to play and be innovative. With a well-furnished library, your child gets first-hand information from well-censored secular and religious books. We care about technology, and that's why your child has full access to computer lessons and online learning. Hygiene and the well-being of your child is priority, and that's why we put much emphasis on how they feed and sleep. Registration is in progress from Primary 1 to Primary 4. Find us in Chira, Chitichifumba, Mulawa, Wakiso District, or contact us on both calls and WhatsApp 0757 802 211.
Trust us with your kids. We are ready to serve you.
All right, now we are going to have the next 30 minutes in the discussion. But let me take one round of questions from the moderator to each of the panelists, and I want to ask them to really make it short and straight. You seem to suggest that the solution is not humanitarian. We want a political solution, and what has been on table for a long time is this idea that there should be a political solution of the nature of two states, one for the Palestinians and one for the... But my question here is, this particular political solution is, I think, being marginalized directly by Israel. They really don't want it. Every time it appears, they will always say, let them do this, let them stop this one, let them stop this one. And again, they say it will only emerge as a matter of negotiation between these two countries. Do you really see this as a viable issue where we stand now?
My simple answer is yes. I don't see Israel eliminating the Palestinians. The Palestinians are there and they will stay. I don't see the Palestinians eliminating Israel. I think some of the historic mistakes we made as Muslims under the leadership of the Arab leaders who were in charge of the Palestinian Israeli conflict is that they rejected a number of proposals without being prepared for an alternative scenario. At the moment, there is a legitimacy, international legitimacy, supported by international law, supported by UN resolutions, that yes, there should be two states, an independent state for the Palestinians and another independent state for the Israelis. And if we go for that option, it's possible, it's doable, and I do believe that it will give the Palestinians what they need at the moment. Yes, they have lost the country they have had more than 75 years ago. But if they go back to the boundaries of their country of 1948, they are much better. Instead of having less than 2% of their land, they can have more of their land. And I believe strategically, tactfully, tactically, this is the way to go. Otherwise,
thank you.
This conflict will continue.
Thank you so much, Dr. Munir. Sheikh Abdul Wali, you seemed to sound so much in your presentation with the idea of people standing for justice. And as a matter of fact, in the last 40 days, we have seen a lot of people worldwide coming up in the streets and standing with Palestine. But this particular justice is being impeded by the powerful nations, as we all see them always dropping a veto on everything that seems to say this is where we stand as a global community. How do you think, in the framework of the present international configuration, this justice can come for Palestine?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. That's a good question. And The states which are standing with Israel and supporting this to their ideas and the lobbyists who are behind this, what we understand that we are in a democratic world. And those people who are in power today were elected by the masses. So it's upon the masses to change this. And this, today demonstrations and people going to the streets is something very beneficial, which will help even in the elections which are coming in America tomorrow and even in Europe, to show that the masses should stand for justice. Because in Harvard University today, where at the entry we see that verse of the Quran which we mentioned earlier, which says, "Kunu qawwamina bil qist," stand persistently with justice. So I think how we can overcome it is that because the world is democratic today, people should stand for justice and should pressure their government and understand that whoever stands with the oppressors will not rule us. Because as Muslims or as the whole world today, we elect our leaders. We have the right to elect our leaders. And that's even what Islam, supports. It's electing. Uthman radiallahu anhu was elected, either to be elected by the masses or some few people. But we have the will to change. So as people, we have the will to change our governments, and then these governments will change, or our leaders will change the situation which is happening in the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sheikh Abdul Walid. And one question to Dr. Yahya. You ended at a point where you actually criticize the idea that two nations based on ethnicity does not seem to work, because we are perpetuating a problem where you have people who have a right to a land because of their ethnicity, and therefore you call for the dismantling of Zionism, when indeed the starters of Israel are the Zionists who continue to defend this particular country. Somebody will also tell you Hamas is standing for a philosophy or an ideology in which they say we have to dismantle Israel completely. Are we not finding ourselves in a situation of a zero-sum solution, in your own words?
So let me first shed more light on the problem of the nation state. So I mentioned Pakistan and India. So Pakistan is the solution to the conflict between the Hindus and the Muslims. The solution is that create Pakistan for the Muslims and leave India for the Hindus. But in reality, we know that there is no single territory that can be occupied exclusively by one ethnic group, by one religious group, by one culture group. And we know today that despite the formation of Pakistan, which has about 200 million Muslims, there are still almost another 200 million Muslims living in India. And we know how they live. They live as second-class citizens, partly because you were given Pakistan. What are you still doing here? The same applies to the Hindus and other minorities who are living in Pakistan. This nation was created for the Muslims. We are doing a favor to you to accommodate you here. So if you don't like your second-class status, you are free to leave. So there is a fundamental problem within the logic of the nation state, which is founded on race, ethnicity, culture, etc. I like the verses that you recited, Abdul Wali, that most of the verses in the Quran, God refers to us as Ya Ayyuhan Nas, O you people. So if God looks at me as a human being, what is the basis on which the Ugandan Constitution categorizes me as a member of an indigenous tribe? So the Ugandan Constitution reduces me to a tribe's person, to a member of a tribe, not a human being, not a citizen of of Uganda. So that's one. Second, let me also make this clarification. You said Hamas is calling for the destruction of Israel, assuming it does. So when I call for the dismantlement of Zionism, I'm not really meaning that that a genocide must be committed on the Israelis, on the Jews living in Palestine. This is something that the Jews have used to silence every criticism of Israeli policy, to silence whoever comes up and criticizes the Israeli government, that you are calling for genocide, you anti-Semitic. The dismantlement of Zionism means that the ideology, the idea that there must be an exclusive homeland for the Jews, a place where it is only and only the Jews who have the right to live with all the rights. That is the ideology that needs to be interrogated. And I'm also saying that that kind of ideology may be extreme in Israel, but it is not exceptional. It is not exclusive. That kind of ideology, though in a more mild manner, also exists here in Uganda. Because in Uganda, the Constitution tells us that Uganda belongs to the indigenous tribes of Uganda who are listed in the Constitution. Meaning that if you are not a member of the indigenous tribes, we can give you citizenship under certain conditions, but we can also withdraw it if you misbehave under certain.
All right.
All right, thank you.
I thank you. I think it's a point well made, but Dr. Munir seems to disagree.
If I, briefly say, I think we need to be realistic. Maybe if we are living in an ideal world, we will live in an equal citizenship everywhere you go. But that's not the reality. I don't think we have the power, realistically, as whoever we are, to dismantle Zionism. Zionism is bad. But Zionism controls the politics in Europe and the United States. Speak to any congressman or woman in America and ask them where do they get their money and political support for elections. They tell you the same groups we have to support. At the same time, yes, there are states built on the notion of being an ethnic group, a select ethnic group. But we also have a challenge with the idea of Darul Harb wa Darul Islam. Let me be very honest with you. When we talk in Islamic fiqh about Darul Harb and Darul Islam, we are talking about a state where Islamic rule prevails and a state where non-Islamic rule prevails. So the state where Islamic rule prevails is a state where Muslims are a unique population. They have rights different than the rights of the non-Muslims. So I think the question is deeper, philosophical, but I think even in our Islamic fiqh, we do talk about a state which is completely ruled by Islamic rules, and anyone who is not a Muslim doesn't have equal rights. It's there. We cannot deny it. Same thing for some ideas of the nation state. But I think that is philosophical. We need a practical solution, and the practical solution at the moment can go as far as we can afford to implement, given all the, ceteris paribus, all the equal things that are around us. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I want to invite someone to hold that mic and go to the audience. We are going to take 3 questions at a time, and please mention in very specific terms whom you want to answer that question, but also don't make a statement over there. Just ask the question, all right? We don't have a lot of time. Okay, who wants to go first? There is a, you go at the back, first go at the back. That's where the hand is started. So
I would wish to question Dr. Mnil, the position of Hamas in Palestine, specifically, because we may not know the standing they have in this conflict. You may Google around and receive certain information that is kind of false. But now I would wish to know the authentic concept.
What was that exactly? The position of what?
Hamas.
Of Hamas. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. It's understood. In Palestine. Yes. Okay. Next. Yes, keep it short.
Thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum and good afternoon. My question is, with the role play of the UN, which is being controlled by Europe, specifically England, and US, which are direct backers of Israel, can international law really prevail in the conflict between Israel and Hamas?
Yes, the one in yellow tunic.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alaikum salam.
My question goes to Sheikh Muhammad Abdul Wali. Is a clarification on the point made on the scholars, like Muslim scholars that usually criticizing Hamas, particularly Palestinians, in regard to their different theological idea. Like to say most of them are not Sunni, so why the Muslims or the world are supporting them in eliminating this kind of atrocities committed to them, especially if people will disregard them, that they don't follow like Al-Sunnah wal Jama'ah, or they are just, they have their own different ideology, which is not common to Muslims.
Thank you. It's understood. Thank you so much. Let's come back to the bench for a while. We are going to take it in bits so that we can be able to move forward. Dr. Munir.
Hamas was elected in Gaza when there were free elections after the Israelis' unilateral withdrawal in Gaza about 15 years ago. The people of Gaza elected Hamas. And Israel wanted now, by this collective punishment, to create a gap between Hamas and the people of Gaza. They wanted the people in Gaza to stand up against Hamas, to disown Hamas. But the opposite is happening. Everyone in Gaza at the moment is very supportive of Hamas. They see Hamas as their legitimate leadership. They see Hamas as standing up to fight for their freedom. They see Hamas as a freedom fighter that represents them.
In fact, Dr. Munir, if you can add a word on that, what the young men hear all the time in the news comments is Hamas is a terrorist organization. Can you address that as well?
Well, Nelson Mandela was a terrorist. What do you think the world now how the world now describes Nelson Mandela? A hero. An icon. Okay. Yes.
Initially, they were supported by Israel. And they took over power, and then they changed their ideology to counter the ideology of the Israelis. That's when they were labeled terrorists, but they were a creation of Israel.
I fully agree with what you have said, because I have read it. I heard it from Clinton when she was the minister in charge of foreign affairs, that she is the one who created Hamas, and she is the one who created Daesh, Taliban. Yes, we hear this a lot. I don't believe in it, honestly. There was a movie, if you remember, when Taliban kicked out the Russians out of Afghanistan. Rambo, this hero, American actor, had a wonderful movie about how he landed in Afghanistan and led Taliban, the illiterate idiots who understand nothing, he led them to defeat the Russians. And the Americans didn't like the idea that Taliban kicked out the Russians, and they wanted to say they were the heroes who did this. Whether someone created or supported the creation of Hamas at one point or the other, I believe at this moment is irrelevant. Hamas stands for what it stands for. Hamas is not representing the interest of Israel. Hamas is not representing the interest of the Americans. Hamas is a different entity at the moment. And this is the Hamas I'm judging and I'm talking about. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Sheikh Abdul Wali.
Jazakumullah khairan. I would like to clarify on that point of Dr. Munir and also Dr. Siraj about Hamas created by the Americans or created by Israel themselves. They did not create it. Hamas was already there, but they supported Hamas in some places. And why they supported it is they didn't want the two-state resolution, that we should have a government in Abdaf al-Gharbiya, West Bank, in Palestinian lands, and another government in Israel, as they say. They didn't want that. So the extremists and the far-right Zionists, what they did is to support this group of Hamas so that they will tell the world tomorrow that you see that this is a terrorist group which is there, so we cannot, recognize this group as a government. That's why they supported it sometimes, but it's not that they created it. No one created Hamas. Sheikh Ahmed Yassin had this vision before, and after that they worked hard today, where we are seeing that they have destroyed more than 200 tanks. And this should be mentioned. We should mention, as others are killing young children and women. In other words, Hamas has not killed a lot of young children and women today. Even in October 7th, where they are saying that Hamas killed babies, it has been now approved by Israel that October 7th, it is that Israelis who bombarded and killed the 1,300 people. Because we have seen cars which were burnt. And now the pilots are the ones who are now testifying, saying that, yes, we shot some Israeli people and we destroyed, thinking that maybe they were Hamas, and which is allied. So it's very long to go there. I would not like to...
Sheikh, there was a question from the audience.
Yes, I'm answering
yes,
that.
Please answer.
I just wanted to clarify on that. Muslim scholars criticizing Hamas, we don't have time for that. And we understand that a lot of Muslim scholars today are pressured by the governments they are. If the surrounding governments of Palestine cannot help politically, what do we expect from scholars who are just, giving now excuse that this is fitna and this is that? That's not an excuse. People are being killed, and you're talking about Sunni and Shia. We are not talking about Sunni and Shia. We are talking about humanity here. Even though they were not Muslims, we would have to stand, for them and be with the oppressed. So that is, a very weak excuse of saying that.
Thank you, Sheikh.
Sheikh.
As a matter of fact, in addition to that, the people who are standing with Palestine in the West, on the streets and so on, they are not Sunni, they are not even Shia, they are actually non-Muslim.
Yes.
And they are saying we are standing with Palestine. So the idea that somebody who is supporting you is not from your creed is really irrelevant, and I think to a large extent a diversionary concept. Now, there was another question, I didn't hear it very well. I don't know whether that was for Dr. Yahya or somebody.
International, the lawyers there.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead on that, Siraj.
The question was whether international humanitarian law can work under the present construct. And my answer would be no. Because last week, the first UN resolution was passed. And it was calling for a ceasefire. Do you know which countries abstained? You can guess. Which two countries abstained? The US and the UN and the UK. Do you know the reason they gave? Because in the resolution, they refused specifically to condemn Hamas. But it was asking for a ceasefire. The ceasefire means that both sides must cease hostilities. So whether you've mentioned or condemned Hamas or mentioned or condemned Israel is irrelevant. What is important at that point is that there is a ceasefire. And the ceasefire is to help who? The people who are being targeted. So whether international humanitarian law can work, my answer would be, if we look at it from an academic perspective, it ought to work. But from a political, realistic perspective, it is not working because there are people, there are countries that are deliberately trying to stop this. Who brokered this ceasefire? Malta. Malta is a very small country,
Yes.
but it pushed, and they managed to get people to concede and say, let's have a ceasefire. The last comment I want to make on that one is that there has been a seizure, I think it happened yesterday, by the Houthis of a cargo ship within the region. Now the question is, are we going to see other nation players coming to this conflict? And maybe then, because what they're trying to push, if the US, they can reach a critical point and they become involved in the conflict, then we go back to international humanitarian law. Maybe then.
Thank you so much. We have a community of people on the online platform. Saim has just told me there are almost 60 there. Thank you so much for following us online. And let me take some of their questions. The first one is to Dr. Munir. They say that considering the approach of Arab leaders to the current Gaza crisis, should we be pessimistic about the political solution, or is there a ray of hope? Dr. Munir, quickly.
There is a ray of hope. I'm optimistic. I'm optimistic because for the first time for over 75 years, the narrative has changed. Just go to Facebook, which used to block anyone who speaks about Hamas or about Palestine or speak against Israel. And you will see now there are hundreds of video clips by people from the US, by people from UK, by people from around the globe who used to support Israel, who are now saying, no, we are now seeing the reality. The narrative has changed, that's why I'm optimistic. But I think to complete our optimism, we as Muslims, and I will not say Arab by the way, as Muslims, not Arabs, Muslims have to play our role. We are observers. We are sharing the videos of the white people who are standing and talking about, against Israel and in favor of Palestine. That doesn't help. So the narrative is changing and the change is coming, but we have to be part of the change and not to fail our Muslim fellows.
Thank you so much. I want to ask this question to, because the question I didn't put who will answer, but let Dr. Yahya go for this. We have seen people come out to express solidarity with the people of Palestine through peaceful demonstrations. Why have we failed as Ugandans to do that? Is there real politics at play? Dr. Yahya.
Why have Ugandans not come out strongly to express solidarity with Palestine? So perhaps we need to understand what is Uganda. So Uganda is a predominantly Christian society, and a significant part of the Christians, the so-called Christian Zionists, believe that the Israelis, the Jews, are God's chosen special children. And they also have prophecies in the Bible which predict what is apocalyptic prophecies that allegedly predict what is happening today. They may not have come out strongly to express those views in public, but in the US, many of them identify openly with them, and the Zionist Christians actually constitute a major component of Israeli support in the US. Nevertheless, it is your responsibility as someone who is enlightened to do your role and mobilize support for the Palestinian people.
Thank you.
So
thank you so much.
I thought that I should make one comment, even
yes. Okay.
One more comment. So Regarding the practicality of the dismantlement of the logic of the nation state, I will say two things. One, as thinkers, we cannot simply think within the restrictions of the existing realities, that this is what is real, this is what is working in the existing circumstances. We must also think beyond what is real in the existing circumstances. Otherwise, how are we going to imagine new realities if we simply confine our thinking within the boundaries of the existing realities? How are we going to imagine a new world, a different world that is different from the kind of world that we are living in? Second, I'm not convinced by the idea that the nation state is the only logical way of political association, because the nation state is something that is very new. In Europe, it is only 500 years old. In Uganda, the nation state begins with colonialism. Perhaps our challenge is to go back to the period before colonialism. That how did societies live before the invention of the nation state? What was Buganda? What was Buganda? Was it a nation state? Clearly, it wasn't a nation state. It was not based on the narrow, rigid understanding of ethnic or cultural identity. Many people came from outside Buganda and lived in Buganda and became Baganda. The Banyarwanda who came from Rwanda became Baganda with time. The Barundi who came from Burundi became with time. It is after the era, it's after the introduction of the nation state that whoever comes from outside of Buganda is seen as a permanent outsider. So the notion of a permanent outsider based on culture is a new invention, which we must think beyond by drawing on history, not by going back to the past. I'm not saying that we should go back to pre-colonial Buganda. I'm saying that what can we learn from history, from the period before the invention of the nation state?
Thank you so much, Dr. Yahya. A lot of questions seem to be coming to you, Dr. Munir, on the issue of the solution here. And I know this is really hot, but one of the questions that I will now give it to you so that you can handle. Somebody says, Dr. Munir, the legitimacy is okay, but Israel and the backers do not want the two-state solution, actually. So it seems like it is something which we are following, but we cannot get.
Well, there are so many solutions that people had to accept. You know, the white people in South Africa, many of them, even now, if you ask them, you know, the change that happened in South Africa, the end of the apartheid system, was never something that they wanted. But when there is an international will to put things right, the party which is faulty will have to act differently. And this is what I see in the horizon, that the international community has started to see Israel as an aggressor and is forcing Israel to act within international law, not to be above the international law. And that's why at one point Israel, I believe, will have to accept the international law and the international will and to come to sense.
Thank you. Sheikh Abdul Wali, a question from the online audience is that the problem with democracy by the majority is that it is easier to end up with injustice against the good as long as it benefits those who voted for the unjust leaders. Election of leaders should be guided by Islam, not by human desires. Sheikh Abdul Wali.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I think that is a question which is out of this context, but we will light a little bit about it. It's about democracy and Islam. And what is democracy? Democracy, a Greek word, which means that, you know, the rule is for people, whereas in Quran we read, وَمَنْ لَمْ يَحْكُمْ بِمَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْكَافِرُونَ. Those who do not rule with the rulings of Allah, then they are not the believers. And I think democracy as we understand it, that it should be the freedom of people to choose their leaders. And for the Muslim states, the rule of the law, we have sources. And the first source is the Quran, and the second source is the Sunnah. So there is no problem in drawing back to our sources, at the same time in choosing our leaders. For example, there is a book which is Thurayya, the constitutional crisis of Islam from the biggest fitna when Uthman was killed to the Arab Spring. And that is where the problem of understanding that we had a free and fair elections after the death of Prophet Muhammad sallam and Prophet Abu Bakr alayhi salam. After Abu Bakr, it came Umar. After Umar, there was elections between Uthman and Ali. And so that between Ali, we could see Talha ibn Ubaidillah and others going around in Hajj, asking people, whom should we let rule us? And that's a way of, so we need to understand what is democracy. Because now the concept is, the mindset that democracy is against Islam and Islam is the rule of law. We understand the Kitab and the Sunnah, that's our sources. At the same time, we have to be, people are free. Even in the Quran, Allah says, La ikraha fi din. No one, there's no compulsion in religion. In the Quran, it is people we have the will which are free. Even Umar radiallahu anhu, he told Amr ibn al-As, for example, and asked him and said, when did you start enslaving people? So about the book which talks about the constitutional crisis is that we moved out of the fairness and the freedom of choosing our elections, and from the Umayyads dynasty we went into monarchy system. That's why today that some scholars will support the monarchy system, but again will fight the democratic system which is fair and to elect the leaders. So I think it's not about the masses who rule, but our sources is the Quran, but we have the power as people to elect those who are just and to stand against justice. We will not there just to wait, as others believe that we should wait for what our leaders say. No, we obey our leaders when we agree on something. No one is above the law of the Quran and the Sunnah. I think.
Barakallah fikum. We are going to wind up this discussion in the next 10 minutes because it's already past 1 o'clock. And I want to now go back to the audience in the room to take one more round of questions. And then we try to be as short as possible, and we also answer them in the remaining period of time. So please come to this side.
Thank you. My question is to Dr. Siremba. So there's now a struggle on the nation state and its possibilities. So my question is, why is it very popular? Why is the nation state very, very popular even in the most critical thinkers of our age?
I have seen.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Alaikum salam.
My question is Dr. Munir. I don't think, from your words, my question is, what is more important to resolve this conflict? Is it a humanitarian support or actually a more political support? In the sense that humanitarian supports will kind of, from your lecture, you said they have attacked so far 5 times. So each time they attacked, I think Palestine received support. If we keep giving humanitarian support and not draw a borderline that is going to be specific to resolve this solution, I don't think the other party that attacked will keep attacking, and those that are all being attacked will only receive humanitarian support.
All right, keep it there. What's more important, humanitarian or political? Is that the question?
Yes, that's the question.
Thank you so much. Next, one more question.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
My question goes to Dr. Yahya. What is the problem in Palestine that has led to the genocide in the past 45 days? In just a few words.
Now let's start with Dr. Yahya quickly.
Thank you very much, Jacob. So Jacob is asking, why is the nation state very popular? If it is very problematic, as I have explained, why are many people yearning for it? We can broaden the question a little bit further and ask, why is identity-based politics seen as the norm? To the extent some of our colleagues say that there is no any other way of political association apart from one that is based on ethnicity and culture. So when I was conducting research for my PhD, I posed a similar question. I asked that why are tribal homelands very popular? Why are the people yearning for ethnic districts, districts based on ethnicity? Why are ethnic kingdoms very popular? The Bakonzo, we want our kingdom. The Banyara, we want kingdom. The so-and-so, we want to break from this kingdom and form our own kingdom. And the explanation I gave in the thesis is that access to land and other access to resources and other rights has been attached to ethnicity, has been attached to indigeneity. If you say that your indigenous tribe is the basis on which you will get rights in Uganda, then everyone will yearn for being an indigenous tribe. Look at the Indians. The Indians are aggressively petitioning the state that recognizes us as an indigenous tribe in Uganda. This is because it is by being an indigenous tribe that you are guaranteed of perpetual citizenship. So it is not natural that people will yearn for that kind of ethnic-based political association. Once you attach rights, once you attach privilege, once you attach everything to one's identity, people will definitely yearn for that kind of. Every society will come up and say, please recognize us. We are also a tribe. We are also a tribe. Are you getting it? We are also a tribe. Because once you are recognized as a tribe, you're going to be given a district. You're going to be given representation in parliament. You're going to be given blah, 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 blah. So it is something that is rooted in the kind of modern politics, the ways in which modern politics has been structured. And no one should tell you that, no one should convince you that this kind of thing is natural. For centuries, as you must be aware, for centuries, the Indians, the Hindus, and the Muslims had lived together for centuries. I get it. They had lived side by side peacefully. It is after the colonialists introduced the notion of the nation state, are you getting it? That every national community, every cultural group must have its own political association. It is only after that kind of ideology was introduced that these people started, they said that from today, we can no longer live together. The Hindus live alone, and the Muslims, we shall live. So the other gentleman asks, what is the problem in Gaza? I don't think there is a single explanation of genocide. I don't think there is. You can give, Dr. Munir rightly mentioned that there is a political economy aspect to the conflict. There is gas, he tells us, that has been discovered underneath that could fuel the fighting. There are so many issues around that. However, I am interested in the problem of modern politics, the structural and logical problem in the ways in which modern political association has been imagined. And that is the identity-based character of the nation state. They are fighting, they have been fighting for 70 years over who has the right to live in Palestine, who has the right to have a state in Palestine. Are you getting it? They have been fighting for 100 years. So I'm focusing on that aspect of the problem that brings out the inherent contradiction in the logic of modern ways of political association.
Thank you so much, Dr. Munir. Dr. Yahya, as you leave the stage with this last question, I think you are living in this world of the theoretical correct kind of solution that will solve the entire kind of problem so that it doesn't happen maybe again. But the world is not like that. You know, Dr. Munir has been laboring to say, look, in the practical sense, you have people who have been here for 75 years, facing genocide, apartheid, ethnic cleansing, and so on and so forth, as we are mentioning it. Is it not really maybe feasible for us to say, okay, let's take it step by step? What's the first thing that we should do for Palestinians? Before we dismantle Zionism, the global giant, what is going to happen to the people of Palestine? Is it not a realistic idea? Start by giving them a state. After all, it has happened everywhere else. Then along the way, we can see at the next stage whether the idea of nation statehood is even correct on the basis of ethnicity and other things. How do you think about that?
Thank you very much. Is that the solution you're proposing is nothing new. It was done by the Europeans that the Jews have been persecuted here. The solution, create a different state for them. But what did it lead to? It only led to another genocide. Are you getting it? Look at South Sudan. The South Sudanese said that we have been persecuted by the Arabs, so-called Arabs. Give us our own state. What is happening in South Sudan? They are slaughtering each other based on ethnicity. There are so many countless examples. And I'm arguing that that kind of solution is short-sighted. You are solving a problem by creating another problem elsewhere. That is my point. You cannot address a problem that let us get the Jews from Europe by creating another problem for the Palestinians and putting them in Palestine. I understand where people are coming from, and it's really a complicated question, and I appreciate but my role as a student of political theory, as a student of the modern state, as a student of the state, is to advise you that if you continue thinking within those limited parameters, you will be only producing very limited, very short-sighted solutions.
All right.
That is the point.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Yahya. And I think that was the last question to him. Jazakallah khair. The idea has been understood, and I think the intelligentsia in the room will have to develop that further. Dr. Munir, you have a couple of questions.
Thank you very much. I want to add one point which is extremely important about the nature of the conflict between Israel and the Arabs, including the Palestinians. The conflict, by the way, at the moment is described as Israel-Palestine, but the conflict is much bigger than that. It's not about Palestine, okay? The dangerous part of this conflict is when someone think I have a God-given right to eliminate the other. We have this problem. The Jewish, they believe they have a God-given right, and they quote different verses to eliminate the Palestinians, even the children, because if they don't kill them now, they become terrorists in the future, become the enemy. Not only a human being, kill their animals. This is dangerous. And unfortunately, we have started to hear a similar tone from some Muslims. God has not given anyone the right to kill the other because of religion. And I'm happy if you want another debate, we come to that. God created all of us. And the Shaykh cited many verses that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's the one who created us. If He wants to eliminate one party or one of His creatures, He would be the one to do it better than anyone. He would not create all of us and say, go and kill each other. So there is a fundamental problem here, which is, I think, different than the conflict we have seen before. This is important, and we need to come back to it, I hope, one day. Now, the most important thing, I'm not talking about humanitarian solution versus a political solution. I'm talking about the two of them together. My problem is with the voice that is now dominating, saying a political solution is difficult. We just need a humanitarian solution. Give them food. Give them a few days to get water and then continue the killing. That's a problem. It's not one versus the other. It's the two of them together. Now, the third, the other point was the African leaders' response. Is it sufficient? Has it been sufficient? I will say two things. Number one, the African voice at this moment has been very different, have been very clear and outspoken compared to other times. And if you want more details, just listen to the ruling party representative, the lady who's the minister in South Africa. I wished we can all learn from her level of articulation of what human rights are, what human equality is. So I think the African voice has become more clearer. But it's not about African voice sufficient or not sufficient. The human voice around the globe, the international community's voice has not been sufficient. When will it be sufficient? When this massacre, when the slaughtering of people in Palestine stops, then we will say, wow, this voice has been sufficient. Let me close by just reminding all of you that I'm not here with my functional title. I'm here in my own capacity as a Muslim fellow, as a scholar, and everything I have said represents me, does not represent my organization. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Wonderful and brain thought-provoking ideas. I want to send one question to Sheikh Abdul Wali as we wind up also. There is this whole opinion and actually reality, we have talked about it here, that the Muslim world has been very sluggish, has been very weak in front of the rest of the world concerning its response on what is happening to Palestine. And considering what our brother Council Siraji said, that international law is not going to work in the kind framework where some countries have power to say, we don't accept this because we are not happy with the way it has been done. Is there anything wrong if the Muslim world would come up today and declare that for us we now recognize Palestine as a state without the UN framework?
That's a good question. And I think now that the international law and the UN and also the ICC, for what was happening for the last 45 days, doesn't have anything to say now. You know, we are no longer looking at what international law is and what, you know, we understand that the UN has failed. They have tried their best, but only 2 states can say no. So we should now reread these laws and say who has the veto. For example, the UN Security Council, only 5 states, you know, to dictate the security of the world also should be reread again. How can we accept that? You know, and that's what's happening now, that people are being killed. We have 13,000 people killed because only 2 states, 2 representatives said no. So I think we should reread that and conceptualize how we can overcome with a solution for humanity in this world. Muslims in the other way are weak today because of a lot of things, because of colonization, what happened to the caliphate of Islam and how it went down, what happened in dividing Muslims just a century ago in 1924-25 after we lost our caliphate, the Ottoman Caliphate. What happened? So we don't have a unified body. And every state of Muslim state has its own interests. Every group of leaders of those states have their own interests, which are also global interests sometimes. So that's why we cannot have a unified Muslim voice today. But that doesn't mean that we should look for a unified Muslim voice to overcome this. We should work around this with humans around the world, people who are free, as we want to be with Dr. Yahya Seremba, as he said, the political theory of today. Are we right? Should we go back to before colonization? For example, we have problems even in our elections. As he said today in Africa, every district wants its own ethnicity. Someone will say that for us as tribes, today we support so-and-so who is our tribe. Now we are copying the democracy and how elections are being handled in the West. For example, in the West, if someone is a Swedish, in Sweden, he's a Swedish. But someone in Uganda is not a Muganda, for example. We have Banyankole, we have the Luo, we have the Bantu, we have a lot of differences. So we should define our own way of democracy, and also we should define our humanity. How are we going to stand for justice, for dignity? How can we overcome this massacre, this genocide which is happening today in Gaza? May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it easy for our brothers.
Council Siraj, I have read and I have seen it in the media. In Turkey, the parliament is actually debating a bill to recognize Palestine. How does that go against international law? Can one country come up and say, now I recognize it, irrespective of what everybody else says?
It is within the sovereign right of every nation to recognize another nation. That's how international relations have always been formed. Now, the construct of the United Nations was to have a global voice where world leaders come and do take recognizance of other nations. Now, it is within Turkey's right to recognize any state and any country that they feel. But the question is, does it apply to other countries? Does that recognition apply to other countries? And of course the answer is not, because it is not binding. But within Turkey's confines and legitimacy as a sovereign state, they can recognize any state they want.
And can they support it at war?
Actually, if you look at the Abrahamic Accords and the Oslo Accords, the Palestinians are de facto, not de jure. De facto means in fact. De jure in law. De facto they are being recognized. And that is why this question keeps on coming up and coming up. Now, the difference is that as a state of Palestine, it is not earmarked by the UN, and that is where I think the catchword is.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Council Siraj, for that clarification, and I hope the audience, both online and in the room, we really want to thank you so much for making it on this particular panel debate. And we really want to thank our panelists. Thank you for giving time and for the hard work in terms of putting the facts on the table plainly, so that everybody can know what is the context in which this particular conflict is happening. At least if you can see the debates from the Western media, my problem is that you see a one-sided kind of debate. And most of the time, because we had a debate with the SAIM, whether we should bring somebody who is going to balance it here, talking about the Israeli side, and say they have had already a fair share of this everywhere. So let's give this opportunity to the people of Palestine, and we be able to also put the facts before the audience. I would like to thank you so much, our panelists. You have really been able to bring up the matters. A round of applause. I really want to thank IUIU administration, and particularly the Center for Capacity Development, for this particular organization. And I would like to thank you, our guests from other universities who have made it to this particular function, and also for the IU students and staff for coming here today. I want to now invite the rector, represented by Dr. Jamil Serwanga, to make closing remarks. And if you have something for these particular people, you tell them so that they can know what happens next. Otherwise, jazakumullahu khair. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Salatu wassalamu ala Rasulillahi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Members, the task given to me now is to deliver the closing remarks as they are delegated by the rector, Professor Ismail Simbwa Jagenda, who has been so much willing to come, but due to some other obligations, is held up in another meeting. So is sending all his appreciation to you as panelists, as participants, and everybody. The message is very clear, and we thank Allah for this moment, and we need to continue praying to Him that He gives us more and more and more times like this, that we can come and deliberate on matters related to our good living and future prosperity. I would like to thank the panelists. To me, this is probably the first time to interact with you under such kind of discussion. Maybe I may not fail to bring in my personal kind of experience in this discussion. To me, I'm an economist, and I feel that, I don't know, the economics was coming on board as Dr. Munir was giving us the billions of dollars already lost. And it's a very big loss, and we hope that Allah will really help us to come back to life. The panelists, you are really appreciated, and the participants, you are really appreciated. And IU is really committed to enhance such kind of discussions. And I know through these discussions, we are going to enhance our knowledge and thought. It's a big challenge as the Muslim Ummah that somehow we may be lacking some kind of information. And the approach to handle such kind of debates, I hear a balanced kind of presentation, and in fact, when we continue, we shall be able to present a better package to the world. I just came back from a conference where we're talking about emerging issues in the Muslim world, and where is the Islamic thought and the knowledge. And for sure, when you sit in such kind of gatherings, you could see how really people articulate on certain issues. It's not just belief only, that I'm supposed to pray 5 times a day, but what goes beyond the 5 daily prayers? I presented something, maybe, I don't know whether it is connected to today's discussion. There is an argument of the critics of Islam that we are poor because we are Muslims. I don't know. And I wanted to ask a question. Where is religion in this game of Palestine and Israel? And could it be also a fueling kind of factor? So inshallah, IUIU is committed to continue facilitating these interactions, and our appeal that those who came to visit IUIU, this is where we are. This is the facility. This is our international conference center. And we hope it has served the purpose. And the moderator is the director of this conference center. And Dr. Munir, we hope that we can make the council, Atlantas was giving me another whisper, that don't worry, this will be elevated to more than international. So inshallah, panelists, this is where we are, and we need your support. I know where you are coming from. There are so many other issues, but let us join hands to see that such kind of institutions especially Islamic University in Uganda. Members, the position of Islamic University in Uganda is becoming a powerhouse where we can sit and deliberate. So we really thank the moderator for the good work done. And Dr. Kasule is our director, and we hope that he's going to make it continuous every day, every night, to have such kind of debate. Our strong prayer is to the region, the Palestine and Pakistan, and Israel, to come to such a kind of harmonious conclusion so that good life can continue from there. And also we pray to the Almighty Allah to give us good life, all of us as human beings, to the benefit of humanity. I don't want to prolong this session. I want to come to the conclusion and wishing everybody a good life and safe journey back to your various destinations. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jamil. And I also thank you, the moderator. I think he has not been thanked. Thank you very much for this nice moderation. And I also thank please let's have a claps for the moderator. Then the panelists, thank you very much again. And then we hope to see you in the next conference. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
They cannot break us, they cannot shake us. Patiently waiting for guaranteed freedom. You can take our homes, but we will remain strong. Cause Allah's on our side, and He's where we belong. Palestine, Palestine, wipe those tears from those saddened eyes. Palestine, Palestine, Jannah waits for your innocent life. Palestine, Palestine, we'll be free of Palestine. Oh, we feel it, we all feel your pain, your pain. Palestine, Palestine, we'll be free of Palestine. Oh, believe in the one who protects your faith. You can do no harm, even with your bombs. You have the big tanks, but we have Allah. You are the tyrants through all your violence. We have the Ummah, and we won't be silenced. Palestine, Palestine, wipe those tears from those saddened eyes. Palestine, Palestine, Jannah waits for your innocent lives.
Welcome to Tamayus Junior School. At Tamayus Junior School, our professional teaching staff concentrates on your child and monitors results. Our spacious compound gives your child room to play and be innovative. With a well-furnished library, your child gets first-hand information from well-censored secular and religious books. We care about technology, and that's why your child has full access to computer lessons and online learning. Hygiene and the well-being of your child is priority, and that's why we put much emphasis on how they feed and sleep. Registration is in progress from Primary 1 to Primary 4. Find us in Chira, Chitichifumba, Mulawa, Wakiso District, or contact us on both calls and WhatsApp 0757 802 211.
Trust us with your kids. We are ready to serve you.